Did you call him a nigger, the child?
The fuck you talking
Did you
about?
call the child the nigger word?
None of your fucking business.
It is my own business. You call him a... Okay, why don't you have the balls to say it right now again?
Fuck you.
Okay. Alright, that's what you say.
You don't go digging through people's shit, you dumb fuck.
Nobody dig into your shit.
A little fucking kid just did, you dumbass.
That little kid, you call him a...
Yeah.
The little child?
What if he acts like one, he's gonna...
Are you about to hit him? You chase him here?
He took my son's stuff.
So that gives you the right to call the child, 5-year-old, and the N-word.
If that's what he's gonna act
That's
like.
what you're gonna call him.
That's what he's gonna act like.
You know, that's a hate speech. And you can be recorded for that.
I don't give a shit.
Huh.
Fuck off.
Okay, we'll see about that, what the internet has to say about you.
This is Dan Dicks here reporting for Press for Truth. The video that you just saw is a now viral clip that shows a woman being filmed calling a young 5-year-old child the N-word after he allegedly tried to steal from her 18-month-old son. The National Association for the Advancement of Colored People launched a GoFundMe campaign titled "Help Us Seek Justice" for a 5-year-old facing racial hate, which managed to raise $341,000. But then the woman in question, Shiloh Hendricks, launched a Give, Send, Go campaign to help protect her family after getting doxxed over the viral incident, and she has managed to raise a staggering $668,000 as of the recording of this video. And the internet is heavily divided over this issue, which is actually a lot more about cancel culture and free speech than it has anything to do with any racial issues. Now, let me just first state the obvious. Berating a young 5-year-old child with name calling because he allegedly stole something from your 18-month-old baby is absolutely abhorrent behavior. This lady obviously could have handled this situation much, much better than the way she did. But here's the thing about free speech that most people don't like to hear. If you don't believe in the free speech for the people who say the things that you absolutely despise, then you don't believe in it at all. What if she decided to call the kid a little brat instead? Isn't she free to do so, no matter how distasteful that may be? What she did was very, very bad. But for those on the left to then turn around and dox her by releasing her social security number, her phone number, and her address, I would argue is worse than her using this highly weaponized word. And the whole world is absolutely fed up and tired of seeing this cancel culture play out. And that's why they have just contributed upwards of $750,000 because they know it's time to push back. I've personally experienced some of this stuff firsthand after I filmed my own viral video of when I went down and live streamed a Black Lives Matter rally in Vancouver in June of 2020. Here's a video I made briefly explaining what happened just one day after the incident. Things began to get heated when one girl approached me with a picture of me on her phone from last week's Black Lives Matter rally, where I was also wrongfully accused of being a racist.
Is this you, sir? Like,
Is that you?
Yeah, that's when I was surrounded and attacked by a whole bunch of Antifa people who were calling me racist. Yeah, that's me.
yeah, because apparently you're a known white supremacist.
Yeah.
Apparently, you guys are wrong.
No.
Okay, well, it's a public space.
Yeah, no, please delete your film of me.
This is live on YouTube.
Okay, so please delete it when you're done.
The mob mentality groupthink then kicked in, and here's a prime example of how that happened. One girl began shouting, "Believe black women. If a black woman says that you are a white supremacist, I'm gonna believe her." Show me where I've ever said anything.
Black women.
What?
We don't question black women. When they say there is a no white supremacist, we do not want them here.
So you're just, this is groupthink. This is group mentality. You're jumping in, you don't know me. You don't know anything about me.
I trust black women.
They then began to close in on me more and more and cheering as I was trying to leave. So I'm being surrounded by a bunch of people who are... Goodbye! What the hell is going on? What quote? Wow. Look at this, guys. Everybody's calling me a Nazi for some reason. I have no clue why. I've asked people, try to, tell me what I've ever said or done that's racist. Nobody can do that.
What's your purpose?
Never, ever, ever said or done anything racist in my life. All of a sudden, the police forcibly grabbed me and began to drag me away as the crowd cheered. This guy just got physical with me.
Your time is. Why don't we get you further?
Hang on, hold up. Okay, hold up, guys. Wait, don't escort me out.
We need to get you out of here.
I know. Hey, wait! It doesn't look good when you're escorting me.
I cannot guarantee your safety.
It doesn't look good when you're escorting me.
I cannot guarantee your safety. I know.
But you need to.
You're gonna get attacked.
Let me walk out on my own.
Okay.
Let me walk
You're
out.
not going fast.
At that point, they attempted to separate the massive crowd from myself. Holy shit. Wow. Guys, this is bizarre.
No, you need to go, man.
Okay, I'm going, dude. You need to stop pushing me, guys. One officer said I have to go because these people don't like me. And my response to that was, that's their problem.
People don't like you right now, and I'm gonna be pretty.
Not a good area right now. Come on, you're
People
No,
don't
I'm
like
not.
you.
Yeah, well, that's their problem, isn't it?
Part of it, yes, and part of it's you. And I'm gonna say your
Right.
presence here is causing everyone else to be upset.
At this point, I've got about 150 people, angry, violent people wanting my blood, and about a dozen police officers who take me to a park, which ended up making things worse.
Okay, back off.
Wow, all these people, guys, share the stream. This is crazy. There's like 100 people here.
It's over there on this other corner, guys.
All right.
Hey guys, we're just gonna move over to this other corner here. Okay? Just move over to this other
Guys,
corner with us.
I'm no longer willingly being exited by the police. I'm being forcefully removed by the police now.
We're gonna go right up on the sidewalk over here. We're gonna go over in the grass over here.
Yeah.
Hey ma'am, can you just back up a little bit? Right up over here. Over here. Over here. So you're gonna come over here. No, you're gonna come over here. Right up over here.
Look at this. Guys.
Hey bud.
Yeah.
Hey bud. Can you listen to me for a sec?
Yeah.
We're just gonna get you to stop right there. Okay?
Sure. And that's when the crowd grew to a couple of hundred people who were shouting to the police, "Why are you protecting a white supremacist racist?" So guys, I'm surrounded by hundreds of people who think I'm a racist. Guys, please share this stream. This is crazy. And when I would try to defend myself against such an outrageous accusation, the police would tell me to stop as if I was instigating things. You don't know me.
Okay,
So what if
stop it. Stop it.
they're calling me a racist and a Nazi?
Just stop.
Okay, bud. Just stop.
The officer then began to strategize with me about how to get me out of harm's way.
So how best can we get you out of here?
I don't know, man. Guys, again, if you're just tuning in, I'm completely surrounded by hundreds of people right now.
How best can we get you out of here? How did you get here today?
Like, what, can we just walk? Are they all going to follow us or what? Like, I don't know. The officer's trying to figure out how to get me out of here safely because there's hundreds and hundreds of people surrounding me right now. And while all this is going on, some protesters were making up total lies about me in order to fit their narrative that I'm a racist white supremacist.
Did you hear what she just said?
No, what'd she say?
She said you're walking around saying that black people ain't shit.
As things continued to escalate, a documentary filmmaker stepped in and asked me, "How does this make you feel?" Not good. I mean, you know, it's kind of nerve-wracking, and when you have these many faces claiming that you're a racist, it's not a very good feeling, you know? I obviously am not. I don't have a single racist bone in my body. If these people really knew me, they would get that, but they don't know who I am. And it's quite sad to see the group descend into this. The police then made the decision to drag me to another location, and that's when I was physically assaulted with a bottle to the head as protesters cheered on in excitement at the fact that I was in pain.
Follow him. Let's go. Let's go.
All right, being escorted out now. Fuck.
Settle down.
From the left, I was attacked with a bottle, and from the right, someone smashed my camera rig, sending my phone and GoPro flying. All right, being escorted out now. Fuck.
Settle down.
Once the police had moved me closer to their vehicles, one officer told me to stop filming. And since I was just physically assaulted, I wasn't willing to do that, especially because I'm in a public space, and for that, I was arrested.
Let's go.
Where's my GoPro? Yo, my GoPro,
I don't care.
Dude. Okay, yo, what are you doing?
I'm moving you so that
no
we can
shit.
do this quickly.
Dude, they just knocked my GoPro off. That's an $800 camera. Why are you pushing me?
Why am I pushing you? Because
Yes.
I'm trying to save your life. Are you with them or not?
All right, guys.
Put the cameras down, guys. I'm telling you right now, turn the cameras off.
Yeah, I can't do that.
Yes, I can, because
Excuse me?
you're under arrest right now.
Why am I under arrest? The stream cut right as the officer was grabbing my wrist. Another officer was twisting my arm behind my back as they forcefully put me in handcuffs and threw me in the back of their paddy wagon. They took me down to the police station, and after about an hour of sitting with my hands cuffed behind my back in a cramped up police van, they opened the door and they informed me that I was being charged with disturbing the peace and assault. I was then read my rights and asked if I want to call a lawyer, to which I said, no, I don't need to, because I've done nothing wrong. About 3 hours later, they opened up the door to the cell and said, okay, you're free to go. This is an unbelievable display of mob mentality and how groupthink can steer a group of people into a very dangerous direction. So that was obviously very insane. But guess what happened next, guys? Dan Dicks kicked while down. GoFundMe campaign removed. $7,000 stolen from PFT. I was asking for $800 to try to replace my GoPro, and the internet jumped in and ended up contributing over $7,000 because they were absolutely outraged with what they saw happen to me. But then that same BLM mob complained to GoFundMe. They ended up having GoFundMe cancel my account. They banned me from using the website, and they returned all the money to all the donors. But then guess what happened after that? Everyone who donated to me got even more frustrated with the fact that their donations were returned to them. So pretty much all of them ended up doubling down and contributing twice as much as they originally did to me through other means. So the whole thing kind of backfired on them, in a sense. And really, they should have just minded their own business. So while this incident with this lady is obviously a very highly contentious issue, I think it's important to talk about where all of this stems from. And I think I can boil it all down into just 3 simple words. Most of the stuff that we're seeing happening today is because of the white privilege myth. Back in 2018, I came across a conference at Ryerson University in Toronto, and it was titled Global Perspectives in White Privilege and Oppression in Canada and Beyond. And after seeing just how bad the brainwashing was, I decided to do a deep dive and to debunk the white privilege myth, because I knew that it would lead to the kind of stuff that we're seeing today. So I want to leave you today with that video because it's incredibly important to understand, especially when dealing with cases like these. And since I've literally been banned from GoFundMe because of the Black Lives Matter cancel culture, I now use GoFundMe, and I currently have a campaign running to raise funds to expose the 2025 annual Bilderberg conference in Stockholm, Sweden this June. So far, 25 people have contributed. I'm about halfway to my goal, so hopefully we can get this up to at least 30 or 35 people today. So if you appreciate my efforts at Press for Truth, please consider making a contribution at that top link in the description below. And that's all for today, my friends. I want to thank you so much for watching. Here's my video that I made back in 2018 titled White Privilege Debunked: The Ryerson University Conference Exposed. You better check your white privilege, all you Nazis out there, because Ryerson University is coming for you. A white privilege conference is being held at Ryerson University from May 9th to the 12th, where they're going to be addressing global perspectives on white privilege and oppression in Canada and beyond. Not to mention programming the youth to become social justice warriors of tomorrow. So in this video, we are going to absolutely debunk so-called white privilege. For starters, white privilege is the imaginary belief that all your problems in life are not your fault, nor are they curable by having you as an individual take responsibility for your own life. White privilege encourages its proponents to blame white people for all of their problems, as well as any social, political, or cultural issues that Western society might be facing. And of course, this is entirely a Western phenomenon. Nobody in India or South Korea is talking about white privilege, and rightly so. If you went over there as a white immigrant and you started to complain about brown privilege or Asian privilege, you would just be laughed out of your job or school, or maybe even called a racist, as you should be. So this of course begs the question, what is privilege? Well, as defined by the political left, privilege is simply racism towards white people. That's it. The idea that whites have systemic power in the West is just absolute rubbish. I mean, the US just had a black president after all. The leader of Canada's federal NDP wears a freaking turban, for crying out loud. And Muslims are encouraged to immigrate here and to continue their religious practices while simultaneously becoming a Canadian citizen, participating in Canada's civic democracy. So the notion that Canada or the US are systemically racist is categorically false. We're liberal democracies. More specifically, the US is a republic, and here in Canada, we're under a constitutional monarchy. And we're certainly not perfect. Democracy might be one of the worst forms of government out there. And we may have let the central banks take over the reins for far too long. But at the end of the day, it's our constitutions, our Bill of Rights, our parliaments, whatever you may think of the system and its effectiveness, it has been a system we inherited through Enlightenment ideas. It may look stupid in 2018, but in the 18th and 19th centuries, this is the best we had. There is absolutely no racism built into the liberal democratic system. If whites are succeeding, it's because the original settlers were mostly white and of European ancestry. And not everyone was white, as parts of Europe, like Spain and Portugal, harbor residents a little darker in the skin. Nevertheless, the word systemic is actually a rare scientific and technical term used only in medicine and biology. So for example, a systemic disease affects many parts of the body. But what the left has done is expropriate a word from science, and they use it to fulfill their own antisocial, anti-capitalist agenda. If there was systemic racism in Canada or the US, there would be clear evidence of it. Like, oh, you know, actual laws that prohibit blacks or Asians or what have you from participating in business or politics, or freedoms that normal whites have. The truth is, everyone is capable of rising to the top. There are tons of non-whites in powerful positions in the US, Canada, and in Europe. So white privilege is just a racist concept that promotes neglecting one's responsibility for one's own beliefs and actions in the world. It is a racist concept that instead puts all of the blame for all the ills of the world and all of your own personal problems on a single racial group. This is literally what the Nazis did with the Jews, and what the Soviets did with the kulaks, and it's only getting worse from here. So here's how Ryerson University defines white privilege, which they consider a provocative concept rather than a racist one. White privilege refers to a socio-political system that distributes power, privilege, and benefits unequally among groups in societies and countries in our world. No, white privilege is not a socio-political system. I mean, for crying out loud, it wasn't even a concept 10 years ago. If you tried to peddle this BS in the 90s, you would have rightly been called a racist and sent to the fringes to work out your theories there. But instead, we get this vague definition that actually doesn't even define whiteness. For example, if white privilege is, as they say, a system that distributes power, privilege, and benefits unequally among groups in societies and countries in the world, then couldn't I refer to some of Africa's crackpot dictatorships as examples of white privilege? After all, power and privilege and benefits are almost always distributed unequally. Assuming there's a conscious hand in doing the distributing, the distribution power of the markets is decentralized and controlled by no single person. That's what makes liberal democracy, at least in theory, superior to previous forms of government. But certainly not as efficient as having no government at all. But of course, we can't expect a bunch of racist lefties to understand history. Here's the next part of their definition. It is rooted in the history of European colonial domination and settlement of the Americas, Asia, and Africa on one hand, and the 19th century practice of race science, justifying this domination on the other. These two phenomena have resulted in a set of political, social, and cultural beliefs, assumptions, and practices based on the primacy of one group over others. Look, no one alive today, except for maybe a few actual Nazis, are actually defending colonial domination. It was an ugly part of history, but let's not pretend that it hasn't been happening all throughout history with all races. It's just that with the domination of North America, that happened pretty recently in history, so we have documented evidence. But there's been plenty of genocide happening before and after. And let's not forget that one of the advantages that the Europeans had when settling the Americas was that the natives were always warring with each other. But there's no point in either side taking the collective responsibility for something that happened over 100 years ago. But even more to the point, the 19th century practice of race science began on the left. And it's still practiced by elites who hold far left views on environmentalism and the redistribution of wealth. It's the left's own history that needs to be examined here when concerning race science. And in fact, it was the progressives of the 19th and early 20th century that aimed to use the state in order to engineer mankind into something great. Of course, these are all silly and dangerous socialist ideas. And here, the definition starts to make sense. These two phenomena have resulted in a set of political, social, and cultural benefits, assumptions, and practices based on the primacy of one group over others. If the two phenomena of European colonialism and the left's progressive anti-Enlightenment ideas resulted in the theories of Karl Marx taking precedent, not only in the West, but around the world, and especially in the Third World that former European powers occupied, then I'm in total agreement. But something tells me this is not how they define privilege. Simply put, it's not white versus black. It's not even race related. The division in society comes from the difference between people who produce wealth and exchange with their fellow man and woman on a mutual basis versus the people who just take, that is, who steal and rob and tax. There are only two classes, ladies and gentlemen. Tax producers and tax eaters. It's not a white privilege thing. It's a state power versus social power thing. Privilege is oftentimes difficult and hard to see for those people who were born with access to power and the resources that go with that power. Alright, you show me a white homeless guy, and I'll show you a rich, successful black dude. Debunked. The White Privilege Conference Global is a marketplace of ideas where our goal is to enhance individual understanding of white privilege and to address the dominant narratives that operate throughout our institutions and across society. Through workshops and panel discussions, we will engage in a transformative conversation about privilege and its impacts with an aim of building a more inclusive world. So this is the gist of the conference. But replace the word white with Chinese and see how well that reads back. WPC is about creating change. Newsflash, so are the Nazis. So are the communists. Hell, so are the Columbine shooters. Not all change is good. Whites need to acknowledge and work through the negative historical implications of whiteness and create for ourselves a transformed identity as white people committed to equity and social change. To teach my white students and my own children that there are different ways of being white and that they have a choice as white people to become champions of justice and social healing, says Gary Howard. Someone report Gary for child abuse, please. There are different ways of being white? First of all, why the heck would he capitalize the word white? And second of all, of course there are different ways of being white, but exactly how does one be white is kind of ambiguous. I guess I'm being white right now just by being awake and breathing. But I'm willing to bet there's a lot of black people or Asians or what have you who started out their morning routine much like mine. We're not so different, you know. We're all part of the human race. But of course, that's no longer politically correct. To not see race is now considered just as bad as judging someone by their race. Unless, of course, that person is white. Anyways, putting aside the consequences of that argument for a moment, what does Gary mean by there are different ways to be white? Does this imply there's a white stereotype we're all expected to fit? Like listening to old school hip hop like Run DMC instead of J. Cole's album? Yeah, Gary should spend less time thinking about people as collective group identities and more time considering the scientific and rational basis of individuality. The most powerful message that continues to reverberate through my head and heart is that of looking at the future and eliminating systems of oppression through the lens of possibility and hope, some educator commented on WPC7. You know, the elites would love to have us just constantly fighting with one another, screaming our heads off, and spending every waking moment on social media debating endlessly with people who are just as committed to their beliefs as you are. But then again, that's all part of their long game plan here. In truth, this anonymous educator and I aren't that different. We both see that something is wrong with the world, and we both want to see systems of oppression eliminated. It's just that I correctly identify the problem as beginning with the central bank, and in a cultural movement that has turned away from Christ and the foundational values of the West. This educator thinks that oppression is coming from ordinary white people like you or me. What can we do to better understand where these people are coming from? Without a glimpse into their reasoning, we'll be left doing what the left does best. Scream and rave and rant your head off, trying to get your point across, but coming across as just another ill-informed ideologue, except this time from the right side of the political spectrum instead of the left. So let's examine what they're telling the youth or the SJWs of tomorrow. What is the Youth Action Project, or YAP? Child abuse. That's what it is. Actual child abuse. And like the Hitler Youth, the YAP program is definitely going to turn your child into a little SJW who's going to snitch on you to the governing authorities. The YAP takes in kids as young as 11 and 12 in grade 6 to 17 and 18-year-olds or grade 12, led by a team of SJWs who will, contradictorily, provide a safe and challenging space to dismantle white supremacy, white privilege, and other forms of oppression. So in other words, the YAP will brainwash your children into believing that oppression is not coming from the state, from its predatory tax regime, to its criminal counterfeiting of money, to its expropriation of industries, and the imprisonment of people for victimless crimes. No, that's all well and good. That's just fine and dandy. The real source of your oppression is white people, obviously. And what's the goal of this communist youth league? As they put it, SNAP, or see, name, act, and proceed. That is, students will be brainwashed to see the imaginary manifestations of white supremacy, which will likely manifest in regular situations, nothing that actually addresses the oppression of the state or its central bank. It will most likely be a simple conflict at work or school that can be resolved using dialogue and transparency. But now, thanks to SNAP, the victim will accuse the aggressor of using his white cis privilege to oppress them and dehumanize them. Students will have the courage and the confidence to name white supremacy, white privilege, and other forms of oppression, which once again doesn't amount to much other than an unnecessary stunting of their maturity. One of the signs of a mature individual is their ability to take the responsibility of their own actions and to take the blame when something goes wrong. Even if a problem isn't that particular individual's own fault, he or she will at least take a moment to assign themselves the blame before moving on to address what the actual problem is. Thanks to SNAP, these kids don't need those pesky Enlightenment ideas or biblical values about sacrifice and hard work. No, they'll just blame white people for all their problems. And the last two acronyms of SNAP are the worst. Students will act by taking effective, creative, and urgent measures to dismantle white supremacy, white privilege, and other forms of oppression in their communities. And students will proceed as leaders, planting ongoing seeds of change in their communities while staying connected to the national organization of YAP alumni. So it's not enough to just simply brainwash our nation's children. We need to ensure that they act and proceed with this racist nonsense. But with any hope, most of these kids are hopefully seeing past this nonsense. Or at the very least, for every new SJW, there'll be a new subscriber to this YouTube channel, or a new reader of Rothbard, or maybe a new teenager who finds Jordan Peterson. The institutes are intended to provide youth with a basic understanding of white privilege and other key concepts. It is important that participants leave with an overall collective comprehension of how institutional racism operates specifically in Canada, while also recognizing that there is room to explore the pervasiveness of racism with a global analysis. Yeah, well, a basic understanding can be found in Mein Kampf. Just replace the word Jew with white, and the word Aryan with SJW. Nevertheless, this is the kind of hate speech that makes you wonder if maybe the left is onto something when it comes to limiting free speech. I'm kidding, of course. But honestly though, how many young people are going to walk away from this conference believing that there's institutional racism here in Canada? But again, I ask, where's the evidence? A majority of white people on the top is not evidence of white supremacy. It's just that the original settlers of this country were predominantly white. And as we bring in different races of immigrants, you're going to find, as is already the case, that minorities are making up more and more positions of power and influence. That's because there's nothing inherent in skin color that makes you dumb or smart or lazy. Anyone can be successful, and since there is literally no Canadian law whatsoever that restricts people of different races from climbing up the social and political hierarchy, this idea that there is institutional racism or systemic racism is absolutely 100% false, and it needs to stop. Yet, we have grown adults here teaching kids to create their own methods to address white privilege in their schools and communities and engage in engaging dialogue. Again, replace the word white with black or Hispanic and just see how that sounds. And so, since this idea that whites have a systemic advantage has now been debunked, there is no justification for racism against white people. But more disturbing here is the language of some of the descriptions for these high school level workshops. Like this, for example. The intentional curriculum design engages the participants in understanding and respecting each other's difference and creating a space to work collaboratively towards understanding and dismantling white supremacy and white privilege. Do you notice here how they put quotations around the word difference? Implying that an individual's unique differences are merely just a social construct. It's like they're paying lip service to individual differences while in reality promoting a social and political collectivism that literally ends with millions of people dead. To these people, you are your group identity first and an individual later. And as the quotations around the word difference implies, your individual identity is just a social construct, and probably racist too. They plan to teach children as young as 11 a master key of terms like white supremacy, white privilege, oppression, ally, and racism. This is not good, folks. If this cultural trend continues and these kids do grow up to hold these beliefs, then we are indeed heading into a cultural and political dark age. They might only be kids and teenagers now, but someday they'll be running for office and for HR departments. I mean, they already are. Just look at our Prime Minister right now. He's the biggest SJW we have. But every generation is going to continue to get worse here unless we take a stand. For most of the 20th century, conservatism wasn't principled. It was a reactionary stand against progressivism and socialism, but only in a pragmatic sense. Conservatives were always on the verge of becoming irrelevant. But a principled conservative, on the other hand, is a force that's been lacking in American and Canadian politics for a long time. And it just so happens to be the leftists' biggest enemy. Because it's one thing to just react to their white privilege nonsense based on its clear racism, but it's quite another thing to oppose them based on a principled stand derived from either Enlightenment ideas or the Bible or both, as this was the kind of thinking that launched the American Revolution. The last thing the left wants is a principled stand against their neo-Marxism. But that's exactly what we're doing, and that's precisely why they want to try and shut us down. So on that note, if you appreciate our efforts in countering this propaganda, please consider making a contribution so that we can continue to do so. You can check us out at pressfortruth.ca/donate, where you can make a one-time donation with PayPal, or you can contribute Bitcoin or other cryptocurrencies, or you can sign up as a PFT patron with a monthly contribution, or better yet, the Patreon alternative, where even just $5 or $10 a month goes a long way in helping us smash that pyramid of control one brick at a time. So please check the links in the description to where you can donate, and even more importantly, share this video. So thanks for watching, my friends, and stay tuned. We've got more video reports coming soon. This is Dan Dicks reporting for Press for Truth.